Thank you. Okie dokie. Yes, effects. Let's go to modules. I guess it would be very helpful if I had a copy of the test with me. Back again. Okay, so let's get to test page 1. So this will be our source 1. So source 1 is a picture of a stamp, all emblem of the effects of the stamp, of the fatal stamp. Okay. Based on source 1, which of the following best describes what goods the British Empire taxed with the Stamp Act? A, sugar, B, tea, C, manufactured goods, or D, paper documents? Okay, so the Stamp Act, what did it tax? Looking at that picture, what's it taxing? Does it look like it goes on sugar, tea, manufactured goods, or paper documents? It's kind of funny to picture, but that's for paper documents, D. Okay. Number 2 has to do with source 1 also, which is still this lovely image of a skull and crossbones. Using source 1, what was the most likely reason the British Empire levied taxes onto the American colonies? Select 2 that apply. Like I've done before, you have to get them both right, otherwise the whole answer is wrong. So you have to give 2 answers. Both of them have to be right, or the whole answer is wrong. Select 2 that apply. A, to control trade between the colonies in Europe. B, to pay for government officials for their loyalty. C, repay debts gained by fighting in the French and Indian War. D, to stop trade of goods smuggled from the colonies. Or E, to pay troops to protect the colonies. We've discussed this before. It is C, repay debts gained by fighting in the French and Indian War. And E, pay troops to protect the colonies. Okay, we're going to go to next so that we can get to source 2, because question 3 has to do with source 2. Come on, Canvas, you can do it. Okay, it's another image. Tax on tea, 3 cents per pound, or whatever that symbol means. Okay, so here's a red coat. Not sure if this is a patriot or red coat. It says, the Townshend Acts were a series of measures passed by the British Parliament in 1767 that taxed goods imported to the American colonies. Taxes were imposed on British china, glass, lead, paint, paper, and tea imported to the colonies. More than 2,000 British troops were sent to Boston to enforce the new taxation laws. So, using source 2, what slogan was created by patriots that argued against taxes that were enforced by the Townshend Revenue Acts? A, give me liberty or give me death. B, no taxation without representation. C, united we stand, divided we fall. Or D, all men are created equal and have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I don't know if you guys have heard "Give Me Liberty" or "Give Me Death." That's Patrick Henry, if I'm not mistaken. We haven't discussed that one in my class. I don't know if you did, Miss Daniels, or not. United we stand, divided we fall. Another one that is a well-known quote, but we've not discussed it in my class. All men are created equal and have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is part of the preamble. Doesn't have to do with the Townshend Revenue Acts. No taxation without representation, we did discuss with the Townshend Revenue Acts. Okay, so it is B. 3 is B. Okay. So number 4 also has to do with source 3. Oh, and this is only source 2. So let's get to source 3. Because believe it or not, I do want to get home. It's already 5:10. Gotta bail out of here in the next 50 minutes. Come on, Canvas, you can do it. You can do it. Let's load the page. Okay, Boston Massacre. We've seen this image many times out. Depiction of the Boston Massacre that was printed in newspapers. Okay, doesn't have any other words. Just this. Dog standing there in the midst of it. Okay. How did the American colonists react to the acts that were imposed onto them by the British Parliament as seen in source 3? A, they protested the acts. B, they boycotted British goods. C, they petitioned British soldiers to stop enforcing the acts. Or D, burned buildings and stores of loyalists. Does it look like they're boycotting British goods? Doesn't look like much boycotting going on right there. Doesn't look like they're petitioning. Please stop enforcing the acts. Doesn't look like that's what's going on. Doesn't look like they're burning buildings and stores right there. Certainly not of loyalists. I don't see much burning. I see smoke from guns. That is them protesting the acts. They were protesting, remember, by throwing snowballs, which started aggravating the loyalists and the British soldiers, which led to gunfire. Okay, so it is A, they protested the acts. Next, source 4. Pardon the noises out in the hallway. Teachers' kids out here. If I'm not mistaken, that's Brian out there. All right, source 4, Boston Port Act. On March 31st, 1774, the British Parliament passed the Boston Port Act to regain control of unruly Massachusetts. The British Parliament closed the port of Boston and insisted it would not be reopened until the British Empire had been repaid for damages caused to the East India Tea Company by the people of Boston. Using source 4, why did the British Parliament impose the Boston Port Act? A, increase the pay for troops protecting Boston against unruly citizens. To buy the loyalty of local government officials in Boston. Reacting against the destruction caused by colonists at the Boston Tea Party. Or to impose restrictions against the citizens of Boston for causing the Boston Massacre. Which one? There's one that really stands out. It is C, reacting against the destruction caused by colonists at the Boston Tea Party. All those chests of tea that were thrown in the harbor. Based on all the sources, 1, 2, 3, and 4, which statement best describes the lasting impact that the acts had on the American colonists? A, it forced the colonists to protest the acts. B, it made the colonists boycott trade with the British Empire. C, it made the nation choose sides to be loyalist or patriots? D, it led the colonists to declare independence from the British Empire. What is the best description of the lasting impact that the acts had on the American colonists? It is D. It led the colonists to declare independence from the British Empire. Okay. So we're going to hit next. We're going to hit next again. And we're going to hit next once more. This is page 7. I'm sorry, to number 7, not page 7. That actually is page 7, isn't it? Use the quote to answer the following question. England and the colonies had the same roots. A war against England is a war against us. Which group of people does this quote best support? A, patriots, B, loyalists, C, redcoats, D, bluecoats. I like my blue coat, I must say. England and the colonies had the same roots. A war against England is a war against us. So this sounds like a statement saying England is the same as us. So that's not an English person saying that. That is a person in the colonies siding with the English. So that would be a loyalist, B. Okay, so here's this image that we've seen before. I'm going to zoom in on it. See these people dressed up as Native Americans. And there's some things getting thrown in the harbor, Boston Harbor. This event occurred to protest which policy of King George III? Quartering Act. Remember, that's not slicing up soldiers. B, troops setting up roadblocks in Boston. C, Massachusetts Government Act. Or D, Tea Act. They're protesting Tea Act. They did not want to pay taxes on tea. So hit next. This will get us to page 8, starting with number 9. Okay, so we want to put a title up here. Okay, and the blanks that are underneath it. Colonists not allowed to speak out against king. Quartering Act forced colonists to house troops, and no trial by a jury was promised. So what would be the best title for the table? A, acts imposed by the British Parliament on the colonies. B, patriot slogans against the taxes that were placed on the 13 colonies. C, grievances stated in the Declaration of Independence. Or D, rights given by our Creator that is given to all men. If you recall, we, over the past 2 class days, so Friday and Monday, we went through the various grievances listed in the Declaration of Independence, and these were all discussed. And I showed each one of my classes a couple pictures of my particular soldier, my big, tall, 6'2", Miracle-Gro eating soldier, and joked about quartering. Okay, those are all grievances stated in the Declaration of Independence, C. Okay, so C is the best answer for number 9. 10, which statement represents the point of view of a loyalist during the Revolutionary War? Support independence, long live the king, help the committees of correspondence, abandon the parliament. Would a loyalist support American independence? Would a loyalist say abandon the parliament. No, to both of those. A loyalist would say, long live the king, B. Okay, so let's go to next. We'll now be on page 9, so we can answer number 11. It has a big image, which apparently in Canvas is even harder to see than it is on the paper. So this was land disputed by U.S. and Spain between 1784 and 1795. Actually, it's easier to see in this than it is on my black and white picture. This was land that was colonized by Spain. This was the United States area, and this was Spanish land. Okay, Great Britain had colonized this area. Okay. Number 11 says, and this is according to the Treaty of Paris, 1783, which of the following best describes the impact that the end of the Revolutionary War and the Treaty of Paris in 1783 had on the 13 colonies? The colonies no longer had to pay taxes to the British Empire. B, a new nation was created. C, there's 2 correct answers, and it doesn't say that here. So this should say 2 correct answers. C, loyalists left and moved to areas occupied by Spain. Land owned by the colonies doubled in size. The king removed British troops from the colonies. So what are the 2 best answers? What did we discuss yesterday? Look at that map. Remember we talked about Britain giving the land from the Atlantic to east of the Mississippi River. Okay, so it wasn't just the 13 colonies. It was all the way over to the Mississippi River. So it created a new nation because the United States was separate from Britain, and land owned by the colonies doubled in size. So it's B and it's D. You have to answer both of those choices or it's wrong. Okay, let's move on to number 12. So we're on page 10. This is the last page of the test. Here's this image again. Engraving of the Boston Massacre by Paul Revere. Paul Revere was a patriot, and he made and distributed this engraving of the Boston Massacre. Which statement best describes why Paul Revere made this engraving? He wanted to turn the public against the British. He wanted the patriots to stop protesting the British. He wanted to make money selling the prints. He wanted peace between the British and the patriots. Now, we've talked a little bit about this image. Looks like a lot of smoke in that image. Looks like a lot of gunfire in that image. And it actually looks like a massacre in the image. But I wasn't in class when this was discussed, but I did record a video and I did point out, and I made all my students write, the fact that only 5 people died in the Boston Massacre. That picture makes it look like a lot more than 5 people were falling down dead. And I had you guys think about why Paul Revere, why that image would look like more than 5 people were falling. He did that to turn the public against the British. That is propaganda in a picture, guys. It's like early media meant to turn people's opinions away from somebody else. And the somebody else who was turning opinions against was the British. So number 12 is A. He wanted to turn public opinion against the British. 12 is A. Okay.